a plan that our opponents tonight clearly would have bought into. Liquidate labor, liquidate stocks, liquidate the farmers, liquidate real estate, liquidate the banks. It will purge the rottenness out of the system. High cost of living and high living will come down. People will work harder, live more moral lives. Enterprising people, such as our opponents, will pick up the wrecks from less competent people. And he went on to add, the third richest man in the United States, it's merely the process of property returning to the hands of its rightful owners.
Now, information.
Yes.
Are you saying that nothing has changed since the 1930s and that no safety systems or other variables are different today than were in the 1930s?
What I'm saying is what Hoover said to Mellon. Liquidating the banks is the wrong answer. And in fact, Hoover, to his credit, Hoover's response was to fire the man who'd been known as the greatest Secretary of the Treasury since Alexander Hamilton, fired him by sending him to the Court of St. James as America's ambassador to Britain. Now, history goes back further.
Question, was that a step up or a step down?
In terms of Mellon's career, it was a step towards the National Gallery, which was finally his great gift to the country and to the world. 135 years ago, the great editor of The Economist magazine, Walter Bagehot, wrote a book called Lombard Street, which I referred to in a point of information. This is the core text. This is the text of thinking about banks and crises. And he wrote, the Bank of England is bound not only to keep a good reserve against a time of panic, but to use that reserve effectively when the time of panic comes. And in 1825 was the first time it came. The bank acted. Sir Robert Peel wrote a letter to the Duke of Wellington begging for him to get the bank to intervene and to lend money. And as Bagehot said, for the complete and courageous adoption of the policy at the last moment after the equivalent of Lehman had failed, the director of the Bank of England deserves great praise. Now, let's come back to the present. Bring it back to date. My last witness is another living person who also has a blog. We don't need op-ed pieces if our witnesses have blogs. David Frum is a resident fellow of the American Enterprise Institute. For those who don't know it, that's the furthest right-wing think tank which still requires that the entrants can read, write, and think. For 2 years, Frum was a speechwriter for George W. Bush, and he quit and he wrote a book about it. But this is from his blog of most recent date. The great free market economist, Milton Friedman, he wrote, referring, of course, to Milton Friedman and his wife, Anna Schwartz, who co-authored the monetary history of the United States, as lawyer Morgan was so good to call to my attention. The great free market economist, Milton Friedman, argued that the right policy in the 1930s was a bank rescue. But the bank bailouts begun under a Republican president, lest we forget, are even more unpopular among conservatives than Obama's stimulus. A few days ago, I was talking to a room full of young conservatives about the crisis. All agreed in denouncing both the bank bailouts and the stimulus. I asked, okay, fine. What was the alternative? There was a pause. And then somebody laughed. I guess it's lucky that we weren't in power. That young man, you will not interrupt my peroration, sir. That young man, those young men whom David Frum confronted, had as deep a sense of history and as sensitive an understanding of the dynamics of the world in which we live as our opponents have demonstrated tonight. I ask for your vote in opposition to the motion. Thank you very much.